Next, from Chicago, we talked to Jeff Vose, Regional Superintendent of Schools for the Sangamon and Menard County School Districts, about the effects of the budget impasse on Illinois education and education funding. This runs about 12 minutes.
Jeff Vose, thanks for joining us again on the Illinois Channel. We're here in Chicago at the Illinois School Board Association meeting, annual conference, and it's really a good chance for people involved in the educational industry, for lack of a better term, to get together. What are some of the issues that your organization is looking at, and given where we are as a state vis-a-vis the funding of education?
Yes, currently, as you know, we do teacher certification, we certify bus drivers and do background checks of school personnel or some of the duties. We also provide GED services for adults and children across the state of Illinois. And the current budget situation with the impasse is starting to affect our offices in it's a challenging situation for us, because since July, some of our programs, for example, my office, I have approximately a $3 million budget, and out of that budget, about 70% of my budget is grant-funded dollars. I realize that part of the legislation did pass the K-12 budget. However, there are specific grants that were not in that particular budget, and it's becoming a big concern across the state of Illinois with myself and my other colleagues. We had a discussion at our statewide meeting about 2 weeks ago where they're starting to be concerned where they may have to take loans from the bank as our reserves. We all have a reserve or a rainy day fund, but we're starting to exhaust those funds, and a lot of our offices, there's 38 of them across the state of Illinois, the reserves are dwindling, and we're trying to figure out how to keep services going, but we're also trying to figure out we don't want to lay individuals off and still provide these services. So we've got to get some kind of action at the Capitol to get us some relief.
Yeah, and it's I think something where people were confused on a couple of levels. One, because the educational part of the budget was the one part that the governor did sign, but as you just said, there's so much of what is funded as services comes from grants. Those are not included in that funding formula. And so without those grants, really what we expect to have happen from a lot of education, as you mentioned, the GED, isn't going to get done after a while. Now, how long can your reserves, you're saying you're using, as anybody would if they had money in the bank and to fill in the gap, how long are your reserves going to last that you have?
I would say maybe into the end of January, and hopefully legislation, they can get something done at that point. I know they're coming back in January, but our concern is when they do fund the budget, hopefully they will go back and backfill the dollars that came in July. That's some of the concern, that people believe some of the money could possibly be swept, and you'll have to just go from the day that they enact the budget forward, and that's a concern. So we're sitting here floating these dollars. We don't want people to lose their jobs. We want to provide the services to our constituents. And it's a difficult situation. For example, we have school funding for a school service line item in my budget. It offers a technology coordinator for my counties, Sangamon and Menard, and I also have an administrator that coordinates professional development workshops for teachers and administrators. So I'm paying those two individuals also, and I'm using my reserves to pay them while I'm still waiting for the grant to support that. So it's very difficult, but we want to continue to provide the services, and we feel they're important to the teachers and educators that we serve.
So just, I'm going to reiterate some of the stuff. So if they pass funding formula and they said, we will compensate you for the money that you took out of your reserves while you were providing the services without compensation, then your offices might get some hundreds of thousands of dollars back in money that you forwarded. If they do not do that, then while you'd be able to provide the services going forward, you would have blown through all your reserves and would not have any rainy day fund any longer.
Correct. And that would be extremely difficult for a lot of offices across the state. I mean, something's got to happen and something's got to give here, and we need relief as soon as possible.
I mean, anyone who uses a credit card might understand that they're using the credit card because they know they can get their paycheck on Friday. In the meantime, you could put gas in the car. It's important to have that liquidity of having some reserves. Aside from that, are there other issues that you're focusing on here at the conference?
Today we're doing a presentation on teacher evaluation. The school board members here across the state of Illinois are making decisions on a new teacher evaluation system that was passed in legislation a couple years ago. And by September of 2016, it's for teachers and administrators, the school boards and the union representatives, the school board and the administration, the teachers of every district has to decide what this new evaluation system will look like by 2016 of September. And this is the first time in the history of the state of Illinois where a teacher's evaluation process includes student growth of the students in their classroom. So there are two models. The district could either decide to put 30% of this evaluation model has to go towards student growth. If you decline to do that, you default to the state model, which is up to 50% of the evaluation would be student growth. So they would determine that off the assessments that they would select in their school district. And that's a huge task to undertake right now, and it's a big challenge for these districts, but it's also an accountability model, which...
Well, on one hand, I think the intention is if we're going to be giving you, educators collectively, millions of dollars, we want to make sure that our kids aren't falling behind, that we're getting a good product of education.
Well, and a quality product, and so
But let me ask this, how would we measure student growth? I mean, that sounds good. We want students to grow. We want them to be smarter than they were maybe the year before. Are there good metrics to measure that, or is it a subjective thing?
Well, it could be somewhat subjective, but there are good measures out there. There's statewide or national standardized tests that they can pick, but you can also do local assessments that could be determined by union teacher representatives, the school administration, the school board. They work together collectively, which is nice. They get autonomy to determine what those assessments will look like, and I think there's enough measures out there to do a good job and do it right.
And just before we close out, everyone should know what the governor did sign the education bill. We already talked, though, about that really only funds a portion of education. But at least that was signed, where other people are still waiting for the budget to go through. As we look towards the next year's budget that would be put together in the spring, when you talk to your colleagues, whether they're supervisors or whether they're teachers, school board members, how would you say is the general consensus of concern about the level of education funding in the state of Illinois?
Well, we have taken severe cuts over the last probably 10 years. We're probably at 2012, I would say off the top of my head, funding levels, where we've lost 30 to 40% of our dollars. And we actually had a budget hearing today at the State Board of Education. We're asking for the proposed money they were asking in FY16 for all of our programs, and we probably got about 10 million less than what was proposed by the State Board of Education. So we just would love that amount of money, but we just want to be level funded that what we received last year. And they need to fully fund general state aid to school districts. They can't prorate that anymore because districts are hurting and they need the fully fund. Right now it's about $6,120 that is for each student.
That's what it's supposed to be.
Yes, but it's typically prorated down to 89%, I believe. So everyone, that is a big ask, is to fully fund those and all their categorical mandates that they have to do. That also all that should be fully funded.
Yeah, so I'll just, because I know this gets complicated and sometimes we talk too inside baseball, but basically some years ago they said the foundation level, we're not going to spend below the foundation level per pupil, which as you said is about $6,120, close enough, but we're not spending that. We're spending last year about 89%. And we're going to get into this discussion on revenue and whether we raise taxes again. If we don't have a revenue growth, then that is, I would say, I don't see any way with that it wouldn't continue to fall, because so much of the budget goes into education, and if you're going to make cuts, education's going to be on the chopping block.
That's correct, because there's so many other obligations to pension debt and Medicare and other areas. So what I hope comes out of January is if they could put together possibly 18 months of a budget would be nice. So here's the issue you come into in April and May, that school districts got to make decisions on staffing and programs. So if they could plan and the General Assembly put together hopefully an 18-month budget would be great, where then people can determine what their needs are and what they can do, and they can plan. So that's what we hope for in January.
All right, Jeff Vose, thanks so much.
All right.